everyone, I'm Captain Courageous and I review old school modules and games and try to give them a fun and informative analysis. This week I'm looking at a classic Call of Cthulhu module, Mansions of Madness. Not to be confused with the board game Mansions of Madness from Fantasy Flight Games, this is actually a compilation of 6 Call of Cthulhu modules, some of which have appeared elsewhere previously, and all are essentially site-based adventures centered around haunted houses of one type or the other. The scenarios are all self-contained and can be played as part of an ongoing Call of Cthulhu campaign or as one-shot adventures. Sound like fun? I thought so too. First, the obligatory spoiler warning. I will be going over the dark eldritch secrets contained within these adventures, so be aware that you might want to get your keeper to watch this video in hopes that perhaps they might run one of these adventures. Still with me? Great, let's begin. The Mansions of Madness had been released previously in 1990, but the one that I will be reviewing is the edition I personally own, which is the second edition print that was released for the 6th edition of Call of Cthulhu in 2007. However, as I've said in previous reviews of Call of Cthulhu, the game has remained relatively the same through all editions, and that includes the 7th edition, so this module will work for all editions of the game. It should be noted that Chaosium has re-released Mansions of Madness as a 2-volume set for its 7th edition of the game, with Volume 1 Behind Closed Doors now available. This is a 5-adventure set, but it has 3 new adventures in it. I'm certain at one point I'll review that as well. Also, all the adventures in this book take place in the 1920s. The first scenario presented is probably one of my favorites for several reasons. It's great for a one-shot game, say for Halloween, and is also great if you only have 2 or 3 investigators and can probably be resolved in a single session. Mr. Corbett has one of the greatest openings for a Call of Cthulhu adventure, as well as getting everyone interested immediately. But my annoyance at the thing comes from the name of the scenario and the main antagonist. Corbett is also the name of the main antagonist in the introductory scenario included in every edition of the game, The Haunting, which may cause some confusion with keepers and players alike, but these are definitely 2 different Corbetts. Perhaps this Corbett is a descendant of the one in The Haunting, who knows, but certainly an original name would have been better to avoid confusion. Either way, this is a fun adventure. The scenario begins with the characters simply visiting a friend's house when they notice out the window the neighbor across the street apparently dragging a body wrapped in a rug out of his house and hoisting it into his car. This is a wonderfully gruesome tale in the vein of the Dunwich Horror, and does offer the investigators a few twists and turns as they attempt to piece together Corbett's secret. A search through Corbett's garden and that which is horrifically concealed in his basement, a progeny of Yog-Sothoth, will surely require a few sanity checks. The second scenario, The Plantation, leads the investigators south to the swamps of South Carolina, where the investigators can unwittingly become the pawns of the serpent god Yig. There they encounter the serpent people that reside there, and a sorcerer as well. This scenario offers the promise of several battles with Yig cultists and a few nasty surprises. It is a bit more battle-heavy than your typical Call of Cthulhu adventure, and it might be great fun to run as a Pulp Cthulhu adventure. The third adventure is the Cracked and Crooked Manse. This one might take at least 2 sessions to complete, but I have also run this as a one-shot. It has a great backstory and does a fine job with its deceptions and red herrings. The trick here might be getting the investigators to spend the night in the Fitzgerald mansion. Here the investigators are hired to find the missing archaeologist, Arthur Corthwaite, and what follows is a potentially horrifying tale of the haunted Fitzgerald mansion, Corthwaite's residence. The place is over 100 years old and has a rather tragic history, but all of that is merely window dressing for the true nature of the horror lurking within the place. There are quite a few handouts, opportunities for research in the town of Gamwell, and plenty of suspects to keep the investigators guessing until the finale, in which the thing that's actually inhabiting the house reveals itself in all its soul-wrenching horror. This one is a nice, slow burn, with creepy things happening throughout the Fitzgerald estate to unsettle the nerves of the investigators and the players, and a skilled keeper can have a lot of fun keeping the mystery going on for as long as possible. The mystery, once pieced together, has the entire house literally soaked in the ooze of the foul creature that Corthwaite inadvertently brought back from an expedition to the Amazon. The final solution to defeating the creature is a bit heavy-handed and offers a rather amusing and terrible ending to the thing. During the entire scenario, when I played this out for my group, I only had one investigator perish to the nasty creature, but as things came to a rather quick conclusion, all the investigators were trapped on the second floor, as the creature's corpulent form simply took up the entire ground floor of the place. So the investigators are jumping for their lives out the second floor of the mansion. Two of the group had broken off to run to the town of Gamwell and acquired a salt truck, which they used to fill the basement of the Fitzgerald mansion with salt. The resulting explosion utterly destroys the mansion, and one of the investigators was crushed to death as a cast iron stove landed on him. Next up is the Sanatorium. What can be more creepy than an asylum? I already went into great detail on this with my previous video, Cage of Delirium, and interestingly, a creative keeper could totally use the soundtrack from that adventure for this one. Once again, this adventure appears to be one thing, but is actually something else. I certainly love a well-crafted scenario that offers up several potential explanations for the investigators to consider and then pulls the rug out from under them and the real horror appears. This one begins innocently enough with a letter from a mutual friend inviting the investigators to the asylum so that he can reveal the results of his experiments, some of which are said to be rather controversial. The place is located on a remote island off the coast of Massachusetts. Its location chosen for its relaxing atmosphere, but also its remoteness from prying eyes. Things go awry almost as soon as the investigators arrive by boat. Upon making their way to the hospital, they find the good doctor and all his staff murdered and the insane patients roaming free. The asylum's handyman, old Ebenezer, and the one who meets them at the docks is also soon murdered. Their boat scuttled, leaving them stranded on the island. The murders themselves, bloody and gruesome, apparently the result of overzealous use of an axe. The axe murderer still at large and seeking more blood. Of course, the axe murderer is only a symptom of a larger problem and deeper evil, and if the investigators can hope to survive, they will have to solve the mystery. This one I ran as one of my many annual Halloween Call of Cthulhu one-shots, and the body count on this one was pretty high. The adventure does a great job of providing dossiers on many of the patients at the hospital, and of course this is great fun for the keeper, as suspicion of the murders will surely fall on the various insane patients. However, a roaming axe murderer is the least of the investigators' problems, as the entity that now haunts the island is seeking constantly new victims for sacrifice. In addition to the asylum itself, there is also the island to explore. With a nice large group of investigators, the players might consider splitting up to cover the most ground, which is exactly what happened when I ran it. The fifth adventure is the titular Mansion of Madness. This scenario is broken down into 3 parts, and of the various adventures included in this set, this one will probably take the longest to complete, taking up at least 3 game sessions. Initially, this adventure presents itself as a simple missing persons case, but as is the case with such things, blossoms into something far more sinister. I'd also like to add that of the various adventures presented in this collection, this one is really quite dark, with some very adult themes and may not be for everyone. However, this is also one of those scenarios that, if done correctly by the keeper, will have your players squirming in their seats, especially if any of them have an aversion to creepy crawly insects. Seth Skorkowski has already done a really great review of this particular adventure already, so I'll leave a link in the description and a card above here so you can check it out. Finally, the last scenario presented is the Old Damned House. Of the various stories presented in this collection, this one has the most detailed mansion, and the bulk of the story is focused there, and the family that occupies it, the mysterious Hazard clan. The investigators become involved when they are hired by an insurance company to verify the theft of a set of valuable pearls, which is a family heirloom of the family in question. The module goes into great detail describing each individual family member, and the keeper can have a lot of fun with the role-playing here, portraying each of the eccentric hazards. Of course, there is a dark family secret, inbreeding being the least of them, as Uncle Wilfred hides a dark secret. Inside him lives a piece of the corpulent frog god entity Sathagwa, and it's this curse that is the crux of the story. This one will surely take several game sessions to piece together and ultimately culminates with a confrontation with the dark god Sathagwa himself and an exploration into the other dimensional caves of Inkia. The outcome of the story is left entirely open-ended and to the whims of the keeper. The overall production quality of this book is pretty good, though it is entirely in black and white. The handouts for the various scenarios are reprinted in the back of the book, and I highly recommend obtaining a PDF copy in order to print them out to give to the players. I also highly recommend picking up this edition in print, as well as the maps within are nicely detailed, as you can see here. At auction, the original 1990 print in good condition is rather expensive to pick up, whereas the more recent second edition print can be picked up for less than $30. Also note that the 7th edition print contains 5 scenarios, not 6, and only Mr. Corbett and the Cracked and Crooked Manse are included in this version, with 3 of the stories being brand new. Fortunately, Drive-Thru RPG comes through once again with a PDF and print-on-demand copy being available for only $21.99. A link is in the description. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Call of Cthulhu Adventure Compilation, Mansions of Madness, on my D20 scale of style, presentation, and value. The style of this publication is mid-2010s production style, black and white art and maps. Frequently, the NPCs' renditions are rather poor, but this was typical of Chaosium style for many years, and honestly, in most cases, a text description of the various NPCs would more than suffice. Sometimes there is art that really should be there and isn't, such as the 3 portraits in the Mansion of Madness scenario, and this is a real missed opportunity. Other times, the maps provided are the best of that era of Call of Cthulhu and really add to the playability of the adventure. I'll rate this a 15. The presentation of the scenario is in every case a pretty straightforward affair, and each adventure gives the keeper the required information up front as to what the story is about and what is expected to happen. I especially like the handout section here, as the various newspaper articles, diary, and journal entries are plentiful, and it's always great when you can give something tangible to the players to refer to during the game. I'll rate this a 17. Finally, let's talk value. Every one of these adventures is a winner and is sure to provide many hours of horror and fun for your group. At auction, a used copy of this book is quite reasonable, but obviously a brand new print-on-demand with the PDF available so you can print out the many handouts for the various scenarios really makes a lot of sense. At only $21.99, there's really no reason not to own this. If you are a fan of Call of Cthulhu, I'll rate this an 18. That brings the overall rating of the Call of Cthulhu Adventure Compilation, Mansions of Madness, to a 17. Very good. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found my review of this module informative and useful. All the month of October, I will try to bring to you reviews of modules that I think will provide a great horror experience to your gaming table. As usual, I'd like to give a big shout out and thank you to my Patreons. If you enjoyed this review, please subscribe and click the little bell so you'll get updates when I add new content. Please give the video a like, comment, and share. Join the channel's Facebook page, RPG Reviews, and consider supporting the channel by becoming a Patreon yourself. Or alternatively, you can just send a tip through the PayPal tip jar link in the description. As always, my friends, may your D20 roll true and game on.